Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to the divisional round first look show for Establish the Run. I am your host, Gary Hartman. Thank you for joining me on what will be the final first look show of this 2023 into 24 season. I hope that the playoffs have been off to a great start for all of you with the wild card weekend last weekend, this weekend here, the divisional weekend, always historically my favorite weekend of football all year. Usually you're whittled down to what are close to the 8 best teams. Usually you get some tight matchups, fun games. Obviously 2 years ago brought us that crazy Bills Chiefs game in the divisional round, and we are getting that matchup once again as well. DraftKings has the full Saturday, Sunday slate up and available with $1 million to first in the lotto. So we will be talking through our first look, initial impressions of that slate. We're doing this on Wednesday morning instead of Tuesday morning this week, just because we got the matchup so late on Monday night. So wanted to make sure that DraftKings had the tournament had time to get up, our team had the time to get graphics going, etc. But yeah, nonetheless, still a first look here on Wednesday morning. If you're new here, thanks for jumping in at the last week of the season or the last show of the season. Our purpose of the show is just to quickly, rapid fire style go through position by position our initial impressions of the upcoming DraftKings DFS slate, start transitioning our heads from one week to the next. This should be a pretty quick show because obviously there's only 4 games this weekend, but we will talk through all of the relevant DFS options. What I like to do first is set the table on what this slate looks like. So obviously we only have 4 games. It is going to be 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. Both of our 1 seeds coming off the bye play on Saturday. So the first game of the weekend, the 4:30 Eastern on Saturday, is Texans at Ravens. Obviously, Baltimore at home here are big favorites. They're 9.5-point favorites. And this has a 44 over-under. So nothing crazy. However, the other game, which is Saturday night, which is San Francisco hosting Green Bay, also San Francisco, our 1 seed coming off a bye, has a 9.5-point favorites. However, the difference in this game is that's a 50.5 over under. That's our lone 50-point implied total of the week. So despite the potential blowout there or potential tight Vegas spread, they are expecting points in that game. So something to keep in mind as we go through here. On Sunday, our next highest projected game is the early game on Sunday, 3:00, and that is Tampa Bay in Detroit. So obviously still in Ford Field in the Dome. Both these offenses capable of putting up 30 points pretty easily. That's a 48.5 with the Lions favored by a little under a touchdown. Another very interesting game to attack. And then a game that I think a lot of people should have plenty of interest in, but maybe won't carry the most ownership on the slate. And I'm curious to see where ownership comes in when we do get there. But is that late game, the late hammer, which is Chiefs at Bills. Again, the rematch of so many great games we've seen between these two teams, especially that one 2 years ago, which I'll call the Gabe Davis game, but you might call the 13 seconds or whatever much time Patrick Mahomes had left there in that crazy, crazy game. This one is a 2.5-point spread. So they are expecting this to be the tightest game of the weekend. They're basically saying it's a coin flip. Buffalo's getting the nod for being at home with a 45.5. Now, that could be a little bit about weather. That could be a little bit about the fact that this Chiefs offense is not the same level of firepower that it's had in previous years, and the Bills offense to an extent too. But, right now, just weather-wise, again, early in the week, we're not expecting to get anything like it was last week in Buffalo. Right now, 19 degrees they're projecting for in Buffalo. It's about that here in New York City right now. So cold throughout the Northeast, no doubt, but not anything like the wintry conditions we saw last week with 13 to 15 mile per hour winds. So nothing that should impact things too much. In fact, that Texans-Ravens game is projected to be the windiest one of the weekend at over 20 miles per hour. So maybe keep an eye on that. The other thing is we might be looking at rain in San Francisco on Sunday evening. So not going to be necessarily clean weather throughout the weekend, but nothing that should impact things too much. Tampa Bay, Detroit, obviously in a dome, although that one reporter that asked Todd Bowles that yesterday did not seem to know that, as she was asking if they were gearing up for the weather in Detroit. All right. So that's kind of the table setting from a over-under and a weather standpoint. I don't think there's any games you should completely ignore here. I think it's pretty clear that Houston-Baltimore is probably the least desirable. It also gives you the least amount of information, being the first game of the week. But let's take a look at team totals as well. The 49ers in that 50.5 at home coming off the bye have a gaudy 30-point team total. I always kind of discuss when you see a 3 instead of in front of an implied team total. That's not a game or a team that I usually like to ignore for DFS purposes. Now, especially if you're going to add it in, it's only a 4-game slate where you only have 8 teams to pick on. 30 becomes quite attractive. I'm assuming the Niners are going to be quite popular this week. You jump down 2.5 points to the Lions as the next highest implied team total. They're sitting at 27.5 right now. Also a very nice number as they host the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Ravens, 26.75. The Bills, 24. The Chiefs, 21.5. The Buccaneers, 21. And the Packers, 20. The only team that Vegas is saying will have real issues scoring this week is the Texans. They are 17.25 implied total. So almost 3 full points less than everyone else on the slate and up. So something to keep in mind when you're getting to Houston this week. Maybe you want to kind of save them for bringbacks on Baltimore stuff, etc. So let's start with talking about quarterback. Josh Allen is our most expensive quarterback on the slate, and we were all worried about weather in Buffalo. Obviously, they moved the game back a night. They had that field cleared up. Now, it was freezing there, but they had that field cleared up, and the guy still just hit 33 DraftKings points. If it was a real snow game, like it would have possibly been on Sunday, I would have been concerned about his upside, but the guy is absolutely elite with the ceiling. Matchup, not the easiest against Kansas City. He had 21.52 when these two teams faced off in week 14. Now, that one was in KC. Certainly finding a stride, I think, from an offensive perspective here. He was running a lot. He had that big rushing touchdown as well. Just such a dual threat. To me, it's him or Lamar at this point on this particular slate for the highest ceiling. And I would give the nod to Josh Allen at this point. He is your most expensive quarterback on the slate. Lamar, though, did end the season super strong, obviously, as he kind of secured his MVP case. And he's coming off 2 weeks rest. Now, that can go one of two ways. You can get a really, really fresh Lamar, or you can get a Lamar that's a little bit rusty, trying to just kind of get his legs back underneath him probably for a quarter or so. I think they're going to do everything they have to do just to kind of control this game. I think he's got a very high ceiling. The matchup is solid. But, you're investing in Lamar in the earliest game of the week with plenty of other solid quarterbacks. I don't think he's bad. Believe me, I don't think he's bad. And if you were doing a 150 set, I certainly want plenty of Lamar Jackson. I kind of want to see where ownership kind of comes in here. But I do prefer Josh Allen, particularly for me this week, than Lamar, but it's close. Mahomes, though, you get a big price discount on Mahomes, and that's because, true to fashion of what he's been all year, he only ended up with 18.58 DraftKings points. Again, he's been struggling to even reach into the 20s for much of this season. He has, one game that he creeped into the 30s all year. Now, in this game, if we expect this game to go anything close to what it was 2 years ago, or even just exceed the 45.5 team total, then of course that gets into a back and forth shootout. We've seen these teams do it before. You also get to you can get unique on 4-game slates. So if you really want to attack this game and you're trying to save as much money as possible to get as many studs as you can, it might make sense to just pick Mahomes over Allen and then just still stack it up as you would if it was an Allen stack, or just get however many pieces you want to fit from this game. So that $1,200 could definitely come into play. I understand it. Definitely prefer Allen. It's on the road. It's in Buffalo. We have not seen the same weekly floor or ceiling from Mahomes this year than we have in years past, but it's still Patrick Mahomes. No issues. The guy that I probably would have a hard time going to this week, which is an absolute shame because he looked awesome in his first career playoff game, is CJ Stroud. It's a really tough spot going into Baltimore. He's only $100 less than Mahomes. And for me, this is the no man's land play this week, where it's like I either want to get to Allen Jackson, Mahomes as a pivot, or I want to get to like this Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff tier here, because Stroud at 6'7" going into Baltimore, earliest game of the week, 17.25 implied total. That is a very, very tough click for me this week. If you wanted to X them out altogether, I think that also makes some sense. All right, Brock Purdy at home, 6,500, easier click to me than Stroud against Green Bay. No issues going to Purdy. I probably want to be attacking San Francisco from their skill position players. It could be multiple players without Purdy, and like how much they're going to lean on McCaffrey, I think, is a thing. There's so many high ceiling quarterback plays on this slate that it's just okay to me. But again, they have that 30-point team total, so I don't want to ignore it. I just really like a couple of the options underneath him. So again, if I'm not spending up, I kind of want to spend down, but I don't feel the same way about Purdy as I do about Stroud necessarily. I think attacking Purdy is kind of a belief into that 49ers 30 implied team total, the 49ers offense in general, and does make more sense to me than going to Stroud. But then you get into these low 6K options, and that's where I'm interested, right? Goff at home against a Tampa Bay off defense that we've been able to throw on all year long. Now, he just did what he had to do to win that game on Saturday. I mean, or Sunday rather. He was fine. 22 of 27 for 277 yards, only found the end zone once. They ended up running in for 2 or 3 touchdowns. So, you need a little bit more than that on this particular slate, but this is a game that can definitely get that done for you. On the other side of that game, though, I think Baker is also incredibly intriguing. Eclipsed 30 DraftKings points in Philadelphia on Monday night. Now you go into Detroit. So he has no issues playing on the road here. Equally tough crowds, I would say. You go into Tampa, you go into Detroit in the Dome in a great matchup, cheap stacking options. You can go like Baker Evans and then just stack whatever other game up you want, probably because of salary stuff. So, we've seen him get over 30 DraftKings points now twice this season, including 2 of the last 5 games. I mean, this is a guy that ended up with over 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. Like the upside is there for Baker. So I actually think I probably prefer him to Goff for the little bit of the discount. But both guys are good. Jordan Love's the tough click, although he played one of the best playoff debut quarterback games I can ever remember seeing with this quarterback rating. I mean, excellent. You're right. Sorry, Tan. He was at home last week. My bad there. Was Baker. I don't know why I was saying in Philadelphia. Back of my brain thinking, of course, Philadelphia had the home game, but nope, they flamed out, and I am not upset about it. Right. So tougher spot for Baker, sure, going on the road. But in the Dome, great matchup. Good spot for Baker and Goff. Love, I think, cracks your lotto player pool despite the really tough spot, just because, I kind of don't want to doubt Jordan Love at this point. But again, when I'm looking at him compared to Goff and Baker and Purdy, that's a tough click. So for me, you got the Allen Lamar tier. Mahomes is the interesting pivot there. And then you got the Goff Mayfield tier with Love and Purdy as the interesting pivot. So yeah, I mean, as we should have in the, divisional round, we have great quarterback options. Going over to running back, Christian McCaffrey, surprise, right? He's $2,100 more than the next highest running back. That is crazy. Full participant in practice yesterday. That's good news. I don't think we should have any limitations here. I think, he's had 2 weeks now to rest, did not play in week 18, had the bye. And this is a guy that was a walking 22 to 25 points just by stepping on the field for most of the weeks, with obviously his 40 and 50 point upside. This matchup, Tony Pollard was able to run on this team last week and had 20 plus DraftKings points, had success. CMC is matchup proof regardless. I think he's going to be a cash game lock. I think everyone's going to do what they can to fit him in. So he's going to be very popular. I'd be terrified of a fade. That's all I'll say on CMC. Aaron Jones has been excellent, just excellent for now 4 straight weeks. If you can count the last 3 weeks of the regular season and last week's game against Dallas, he's been over 110 yards on the ground in all 4 of those games. He only had 3 rushing touchdowns all regular season. What is he doing in week 19 or in the wild card week? He just breaks the slate and gets 3 touchdowns of his own for 35 DraftKings points. If you played the full slate, if you played the Saturday only slate, you needed Aaron Jones. He's awesome. So I do think, or Sunday only, I guess he was playing Sunday. I do think, much tougher spot going into San Francisco. There's no doubt about it. It's not a great matchup. That San Francisco defense is rested. But I love the role for Aaron Jones right now, and I don't want to rule it out. This is a small slate. Things could get weird. And it's not like some of these other guys right below him have bad matchups too. So I'm willing to just play into the role and the production right now on Aaron Jones and think he's a fine play. I think I prefer the Detroit guys to Tampa Bay, to Rachaad White here. I think there's a weekly higher ceiling, but again, if I'm attacking this game, I really want it to be through the air. It's like a typical, both teams have bad pass defenses. They both have pretty good run defenses. But Jahmyr Gibbs especially is someone that's utilizing the pass game. So I kind of probably be looking at him as an extension of my stack options for Detroit. So certainly want to have exposure, particularly in Goff and Baker stacks for him. Whereas Montgomery, I'd be using more as a pivot to the lineups that I don't have Baker or Detroit stacks. That's when I would kind of get my one-off Montgomery plays. He's cheap enough. He'll still get plenty of carries. He'll get used on the goal line. I think he's fine at 6-1 on this slate. Now, Rachaad White, Rolls remains amazing, but he's kind of running into a similar thing 2 weeks in a row here, where his team had great passing matchup and a tough rushing matchup. Now, we saw Detroit get in the middle of the season have some struggles on all sides of defense, but their defense is starting to play much better. Now, the thing working in Rachaad White's favor is volume and role. You know exactly what's going to happen there, right? As opposed to the Lions guys who are going to split some work, or even Aaron Jones, who, game script in this particular spot might get away from him. Rachaad White, like no matter how this game goes, will be involved, whether it's rushing or passing. So I don't mind it. Not my favorite type of ceiling play on this particular slate and this particular matchup, but I understand the play for sure. Pacheco, clearly the guy they trust here. I mean, they gave him right back to that workhorse load in that first playoff game against Miami. 24 carries here. If it's cold once again, I think there's a chance that these running backs are heavily featured, both Pacheco or James Cook here. So James Cook at 18 carries and 4 catches. Do prefer. Ooh, it's close. Yeah, that's a close one. I like both. I really like both guys this week. Maybe prefer Pacheco just a hair because of what Josh Allen does to eat into James Cook's rushing upside. But both guys are fine as skinny correlation or in correlation with your stuff or one-off plays. I don't think either of them are bad. And then you start getting into some of these sub 6K guys, which also have some cases, especially the Baltimore guys, right? You got Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. I mean, this is a 4-game slate. We could certainly consider any of these guys. Justice Hill, surprisingly played in week 18, but just had 3 targets. So, he will be used a little bit in the pass game. So if you want him in some correlation stuff, or Gus Edwards might just get fed in the second half, plus some goal line carries. I think he's really interesting. We saw him have 13 rushing touchdowns this season and, be a very, very serviceable in the middle of the year, right? In those week 7s and week 8, he had over 20 DraftKings points. This to me is the kind of matchup where that could easily happen again. So I do like him quite a bit, where Devin Singletary is the guy they trust there, but tough spot against Baltimore, where I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be able to stick to the run, although the matchup's kind of neutral. So, again, another guy that should make your pool. And then other guys, because it's such a small slate, you could kind of take shots on backups, right? So we saw Elijah Mitchell kind of become the backup here for Christian McCaffrey. You could take shots on him in large field tournaments. You could take shots on CEH in large field tournaments, a little bit of Chase Edmonds in large field tournaments. Like, these are guys max 1 spots for any of these types of guys. But and even the Ty Johnson, Latavius Murray group, certainly you could take some small, large field lotto shots on, but I would stick to the starters for the most part, or the split backfields. Okay. Receivers, you got a ton of great options. Amon-Ra looked awesome in his first career playoff game last week, 7 for 110, got to the bonus, did not find the end zone, still found over 21 DraftKings points. We have quite the streak going with Amon right now, which is 5 straight games between 21 and almost 32 DraftKings points. He has an incredibly high floor. This is a great matchup. I really, really like Amon-Ra St. Brown as our most expensive receiver on the slate. Now, I expect that he'll be popular. I think if I'm playing Jared Goff, for example, I know it's going to be a very popular combination, but I have a hard time thinking that Jared Goff gets there without Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really do. I'm just trying to think, like, how would that really realistically happen? And I guess it could happen with 3 Laporta touchdowns. So if you want to, like, not completely rule it out, fine. But for me, 80+% of my Goff exposure would want to be with Amon-Ra. Niners guys, I think there'll be interesting pivots to CMC if you're trying to look at them that way, but double stacks, triple stacks, all very much in play. And something else I talk about, you can get really, really concentrated with your stacks, right? Even this last week, we saw a triple stack on the 6-game slate, a triple Dallas stack with a double Green Bay bring back as an optimal, the perfect lineup. So of course, on a 4-game slate, you can get even crazier. So, I mean, if you want to go Purdy, Debo, CMC, Kittle, with Christian Watson and Aaron Jones on the bring back, like, you could do stuff like that. So something to consider. Debo had a really strong end of the season. Now, last couple weeks he came back to earth. He did have 18 points in week 17, but man, those weeks 12 through 15 there, he was just cruising between 20s and in the 20s and 30s on DraftKings points. And we know what the ceiling is there on Debo. Mike Evans, I made the cover boy of this video. We are due for a big Mike Evans game, and he's someone that likes to come through when he's due. And the matchup is excellent. We just saw what Puka Nacua did to this team against Detroit. We know we can throw on Detroit. We know this game has a chance to be a track meet. And we still know that Mike Evans is our favorite Tampa Bay target with the biggest ceiling for sure. The ADOT's always going to be there. The touchdown upside is going to be there. He still had 7 targets. And 7-2 is just expensive enough that I'm hoping the field stays somewhat off of him. I like him a lot this week, whether it's in correlation with Detroit or Tampa Bay or as a one-off play. I think Mike Evans is super, super strong here in divisional round. Nico has an ability to beat up on any team, it seems like, even in tough matchups. Like, He scored in both these last games against Cleveland. He was hurt in that Cleveland and Jets game too, but he still has had an ability to put up numbers, right? Against Pittsburgh, he had 7 for 170 and 2. Like, he is definitely a guy that could put up numbers. Now, this is not an easy matchup, but as a bringback that I think will fall through the cracks, that's when I'd be looking at him. Diggs is all the way down to 7K. So our fifth, Nico Collins is more expensive than Stephon Diggs. That is kind of crazy to think about. And the targets are still there. We just haven't seen the ceiling. I don't want to get too bogged down in the small sample if I'm attacking this game, especially getting the discount on Diggs. I'd be interested. Ayuk, I think he'll be less popular than both McCaffrey and Debo, and that's kind of where he comes into play. I still think as like our traditional pocket passer pairing with Purdy, he's my favorite guy to get in there. Debo kind of gets manufactured touches, could be rushing touchdowns, could be screen passes that he takes to the house, where Ayuk, if Purdy hits, downfield stuff, etc. So I think he's interesting. Rashee Rice, he's certainly finally established himself as the true alpha KC wide receiver one. I think even over Travis Kelce at this point, which is good to see. By far the most talented guy. I also think if you're attacking this game from an aerial perspective, meaning you're getting into a full game stack on either side, Buffalo or Kansas City, he becomes a very hard guy to ignore, because if that game hits its 45.5 and goes over or gets into a back and forth track meet, I have a hard time thinking somebody else is getting there from KC. Now, it could be Kelce. It could definitely be Kelce, but Rashee Rice would be the preference there right now. Godwin had started to play really well towards the end of the stretch, did save his day with a touchdown here in that 32-9 home win against Philadelphia. I think he's good. I do prefer Evans, but on full point DraftKings PPR with kind of how he's been playing down the stretch, if you need to save the money and you want to attack that passing offense, you can. Of course, you can double them up, especially on these 4-game slates. Zay Flowers, dealing with a little bit of a calf thing, was limited in practice yesterday. Finished the season really, really strong. I was worried a little bit about his ceiling, as he had not eclipsed 20 DraftKings points until week 12. And then in 4 of his last 5 performances, he scored over 20 DraftKings points. So we know how they like to use him. Full point PPR, 6K is a very reasonable tag for Zay. I get it. I would be terrified of going back to Romeo Doubs. Now, I know he had kind of had his absolute ceiling type game in this game against Dallas. He had 6 for 151 and a touchdown. He's definitely helped by the return of Christian Watson on the field. Even earlier in the season, when we were seeing some bigger performances, that was when he was playing with Christian Watson getting the attention on the other side. So I think that's really important for Romeo Doubs. He should have that once again this week. I'm just afraid, okay, people are looking for a San Francisco bring back. They kind of look at the box score stuff. Oh my God, Romeo Doubs went nuts. I don't want to attack Aaron Jones. I don't want to attack the running back. That's a little expensive. And I just think that there's a chance, we'll see where ownership comes in, that he's a little overowned, and I just don't think he's repeating this type of performance. I don't think he's that good of a player. He's one of these guys that gets 30 DraftKings points once in a season. He just did it. He can easily prove me wrong, but I'm not that interested this week. Now, Jaden Reed, also dealing with, a little banged up, kind of goose-egged last week. Now, if he's good to go and no one's going to go there, it's cheaper than Dobbs. I'm more interested in Reed and Christian Watson for what that's worth. Now, Watson was limited last week. Only had 1 catch for 9 yards, but give him another week under his belt. They're going to need his big playability if they want any chance in this game, and he's only 4,200. So prefer Reed and Watson as my bringbacks on San Francisco stuff, or as one-off plays if you want. We can't really talk about Gabe Davis and the secondary Bills receivers. I don't know if he's going to go again. If he doesn't, Khalil Shakir becomes interesting again, but keep an eye there. Dontavion Wicks would be 4th in that pecking order for me of Green Bay receivers. And then you can definitely take shots on the non-Zay Flowers Baltimore guys. Beckham, probably my preferred choice. Definitely boomer bust, really low floor, but can definitely make your pool, of course. So can Bateman, so can Josh Reynolds, so can, Jameson Williams. Like, you can get weird, of course, with a 4-game slate. All right, going over to tight end quickly here. Travis Kelce is our most expensive, but only by $100 over Sam Laporta. And I did have 7 for 71 on 10 targets in this last game. I think, again, if they want to have any success here, they need to get Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice involved. 6K is plenty cheap for Kelce. I like him actually this week quite a bit. I think I like him a lot because I think everyone's going to want to click on Sam Laporta, who gets such a good matchup. There's no doubt about it. He gets such a good matchup. And, he made it through that whole game, scored a touchdown. It's like, I don't think we should be worried too much about the injury. Guy's a beast. Best rookie tight end season of all time. I think he's safer than Kelce this week, but I think he'll be more popular as well. Kittle, 5,200, George Kittle against the Packers at home, coming off rest, 2 weeks of rest. Like, really like Kittle for sure. So all these tight end options seem really good. I think Mark Andrews might play this week. That one's a little scarier because I think he'd be limited. I think he probably splits with Isaiah Likely. Like, how do I not find the 200 to get to Kittle? It's also the first game of the weekend. That one's scarier. Also makes likely scary though. If Andrews sits, I think Isaiah Likely is pretty good at 4-7. If Andrews is in, I'm not really interested in either of them. Kincaid did have a touchdown there. Not the easiest matchup against KC, but I think very much in play as one of the top targets for Josh Allen at this time. Dalton Schultz, I don't think I'm really interested in going to him against Baltimore. That's a tough matchup there for him. Then you have the Musgrave and Tucker Kraft guys that kind of were splitting work last week. Musgrave did find the end zone there. Can both make your pool. I think, again, you can kind of keep your pool kind of expanded here on this 4-game slate. But I don't think our cheap options this week are that great. You have Musgrave and you have Cotton. I call him Cotton because K-Dot and Cotton. 8 for 89, 11 targets. Best game of this year. I mean, he was just I guess not the best game. He had 24 points, but that was 2 touchdowns. Biggest volume of the year for sure for K-Dot in there in week 19 and in a wildcard week. And he gets another good matchup here. So I think he's interesting. I do prefer the outside receivers for Tampa Bay this week, but I think he can make your pool. I also am skeptical he repeats that type of performance. Dawson Knox is like a salary-saving punt in correlation only. He did find the end zone last week. And honestly, the same can be said for Brevin Jordan, who took his 1 for 76, 1 to the house. I doubt he does that again. But if you need like a 2,500 tight end, probably not the way I'm playing this week. But if you do, I guess you can make your pool. Yeah, so really fun week for sure. I think you can kind of talk yourself into stacks on any team this week. Maybe not Houston. Green Bay, a little bit skeptical, but like everyone else, you could talk yourself into full game stack. So really fun week. I always like this divisional round week. I know 2 years ago, I did establish the million with Leone during that crazy Bills Chiefs game. My flag went to Gav Davis. I obviously had a great week that week. I wish you all that same success and a lot of fun just watching the great football this weekend. Enjoy Saturday and Sunday. We will not get another weekend like this in a long time. Obviously, we'll have the championship week the following week, but having 4 straight games on Saturday and Sunday of amazing NFL football that at least anticipate, we're going to miss it when it's gone. So enjoy it. I thank you all so much for joining me this entire season on this show. I have a blast doing it. It helps me get into the correct mindset for the week. And I know it's a little bit unconventional. I'm just kind of stream of consciousness talking at you all, but the response has been amazing. And I can't thank you all enough. I hope I'll be back with you next year. We'll see how that all goes. But regardless, thank you so much for tuning in all season. And I really wish you all the best of luck here in the playoffs and everything else moving forward this winter and into 2024. So thanks so much, everybody. Check out everything else we have going on at establishtheRun.com. We'll have you covered all week leading up to these 2 Saturday and Sunday slates or the main slate for all weekend. So thanks again. Take care, everybody.